Here is the next project on Maggie, my 1960 MGA, and this one I think is going to be one of the more challenging ones. That's why I kind of left it to the last, although I don't think it's going to be too much more difficult than, say, doing two whole sides of sills. But the problem with this is that this thing is called a duct panel, this thing with the X shape in here, and this car was clearly received a blow in the front. There's over here on this front part of the clip, there's a indent in here where I think the bumper overriders were pushed back into it. Something else came pushing in, and I'm not sure how this was fixed, but it's clearly this whole panel needs to be out farther, because you can watch me put my hand down in here. Look at that, I can put my fist down there and my hand is not even flush with this top surface. So this whole panel inside here, on the inside of the compartment, is the duct panel. I've removed the bolts here from these two brackets. These brackets are welded to the inner frame, which is solid on both sides. And I was able to remove these bolts here after much trouble, and I finally found a new trick that made them come out. I was shocked at when they came out, but back to that in a second. So this is the duct panel, and I've just got a couple of spot welds to remove over in here, possibly over there, and possibly in the front of it too. And then it's normally, I think, spot welded to a piece of metal that goes from the clip across here to the other side. And I think what happened is that metal might be still there, but I think somebody's covered it in filler or something, or it's just all mangled. I'm going to try to remove it and save as much of the original front piece as possible. Underneath is another piece that you can buy, this piece here, and that goes all the way across, and that has holes for weld nuts, and that holds the front valance. My front valance is over here, and it's in rough shape, but I am going to repair it because these things cost $500 for a replacement, and mine is as far as I'm concerned, it's repairable at $500, and at least I've got an original part. Just needs to be bent back in shape, cleaned up, and we'll see. But these holes on the top of the valance here, those made up, and you can see the angle, the shape of it here goes, let's see if I can get it farther away. There, the shape of it is round to match the front of the MGA. And the holes will go over here onto this piece here. Let's see if I can get you better light to see that. There, that piece under there goes all the way across. And the only problem I have with that piece right now, other than it might be bent and distorted a little bit, is that I've got a bunch of weld nuts that I had to break off when I finally get this all apart. But that's easily fixed. I'm getting pretty good at that sort of thing. And so the problem now is to try to get this old duct panel out and put in a nice replacement piece. Now here's the replacement piece over here. Here it is on a bench. And these, from what I've been told, are very precisely made, and once you, in a car like mine with the front kind of mangled, you put something like this back in, and if you get it in right, it's going to make everything be in correct alignment. So we're going to find out if that's true, but it's certainly a much better piece than that piece of mangled steel that's in there now. So that's the next project, and we'll proceed to try to get the old one out. As you can see with the front of the car, I have been successful in removing the old duct panel. This piece of junk down on the floor is the old duct panel. If I move my hand here, my pointer here, side, you can see it drops down like about 2 or 3 inches. That's how much it was creased. So it took a pretty good blow in the front. And as you can see on the front edge here, it's pretty mangled. I cleaned as much of it as I could off. This little part here, running along here and kind of folded over, is what's supposed to connect the lower part of the shroud, just below where the grill goes over here. And it's a piece of metal that runs across all the way to here. That will have to be replaced with a new piece. Another mangled mess underneath it all here is what's left of what's called the skirt panel. This is the panel with weld nuts in it that holds the front valance. Over here you can see my front valance off the car, and I'm going to bend that back into shape and keep it because the new ones are $500 for a new steel one. And who knows if they'll fit right. I had a lot of trouble trying to figure out how this thing mounts. I can see from the mangled piece that the front of the shroud and the, I don't know if you can see under here, but I removed a bunch of spot welds underneath here from this part of the shroud. Underneath, I drilled up here, removed the spot welds, and they were welded up into this piece. I wasn't quite sure how it fits, and I had been tinkering around with the new duct panel, which is over here, and I should orient this the way the car is. It'll go over onto the car like that. And I was having trouble figuring out how that skirt panel mounts underneath here. And I've been doing a lot of research online. Never found a real good explanation. Wasn't quite sure whether it mounts flush inside here or up against the edge of the flanges. Well, you know, it's pretty clear once I put this in here that that's the way that mounts. And I did some measurements on the depth of the flange on the where the corresponding bolts holes are on the front valance, and I could see that it pretty much has to, the valance is going to go up in here obviously and mount to these bolts, and it's got to clear down far enough because it also, the valance also mounts to parts of the front fender which go over here when the fender is put in. So that's where I am right now. In order to get that thing out, the conventional wisdom says that I read everywhere is drill out the spot welds from the inner wings over here. This is where the bracket went, and then it's supposed to be able to drill out the spot welds in here. Well, I had a hard time getting those off on both sides, so finally I said to hell with it, and I just got a cutoff wheel and got in there with my really sturdy 3-inch cutoff wheel and just sliced down here. And really I think it's better than drilling out the spot welds, because now I can grind this stuff off here flat, and I really wish I hadn't drilled these spot welds out, because I wasn't able to do it over on farther in anyway. And so I just cut them off, and as I did it, when I got a piece that was in the way and I couldn't get access, I just got in there with some pliers and bent it over out of the way so I could get in farther. And I cut it. Then I finally was able to get it loose. Basically it's along the two inner wings, inner fenders, and over here underneath here. If this piece was intact, I would have had to have maybe do spot welds all the way along here, drill them out. But as it turned out, this was already broken off on each side of the shroud, and this whole thing obviously needed to be replaced, so that whole business came off, as I was telling you a second ago, in this piece. So I'm going to proceed to clean it up and see if I can get it in there with the new piece. Here's what the inside looks like. I guess I've got a light here so you can see. The front clip comes down and folds over, and those spot welds were where it attached to the front skirt panel, which is what attaches the front valance that goes beneath the clip and behind the bumper. Similar situation, as you can see, a duct panel that was all mangled has been removed. Similar situation over here on the other side. Here's a look at the front end repairs ready for welding. This is the duct panel. It's nice and level. It's attached to the front of the shroud with a bunch of weld holes and ready to go, and some sheet metal screws holding it in. Same thing over here on this side. I've already done a couple of trial fits of the grill. It certainly lines up with these grill mounting holes in the top and bottom. A little bit of curvature. It seems to fit. I'm going to have to fiddle with it. Might have to do a little bit of filler to make it perfect. Over here on the right side is where we have that large replacement piece, and it is now attached to the inner fender with screws ready to be welded. Inside, here's a view from the inside of the duct panel, looking at how close a match it is to the bottom of the inner fender on the right side. And over here on the left side, you can see the fit. You can see the fit on the inside. Same sort of fit on the other side. Here's the right side of the car ready for welding, attached with screws. I've decided to, on the duct panel, to weld everything in first without the braces that go over here and over here. I found that the ones I bought, which I got from Clock Spares and Restorations, do not have a proper curvature to match the for the part that goes against the inner fender. So I'm going to have to modify them by cutting them and reshaping them on the part where it hits the curvature of the fender. It would be okay if I was just welding it at the bottom. So that will be done later. Also to be done is a piece to go in here later, and the skirt panel to go underneath that will hold the valance. But we're ready to go. I'm going to start welding this. This is a big challenge for me, and I think it's going to come out good. I finished welding in the replacement radiator duct panel, and it was welded along the front of the shroud here. The shroud was full of filler. I got all the filler out of it and I pounded it out with body tools, and it's a pretty decent shape. Another piece here have to be cut out with the shroud repairs, and then some more filler put in. Welded all along the bottom. Here, there's another piece that I need to weld in along here that also bends underneath. It goes across, and it's used also to hold the valance panel that goes underneath. Again, welded in the front here. And inside, there we go. You can see how it's a very good fit over there. This piece in here was previously replaced. That's a replacement piece I built. These brackets both came to me with straight edges over here, but they're supposed to be welded to the rounded part of the inner fender, so I had to actually cut them and re-weld them to match. I had to cut the flanges off, not off, but a slot in them, bend them to match the curve, and then I re-welded in the gap. So I had to do repairs on both brackets to make them fit. The inner fender is welded now onto that. There's flanges on the bottom edge of the duct panel that weld also, for the inner fender. It was actually very solid even without these. These have to be precisely aligned because the holes that are in them, when here and here, go through to the pads underneath. That these are actually the front body to frame mount. This being the body, the frame mount underneath it. So the radiator duct panel, that big old mangled piece of junk that I had originally, has all been replaced with all new stuff, and it's coming out quite well.